figure that out. And then, what was I going to say? But with Esau, right, she passed by because she didn't want to stop, right? She wanted to keep on going, to distance herself from sin. And so Esau couldn't just, squirming wasn't enough, right? He needed to really pursue it, right? So he ran and squirmed to get out. So it's really showing very, it's one thing if, I think if we just read the Midrash, we might just get a sense that in some ways they were equally stirred up, right? Jacob and Esau, as they went past these different houses of worship. But the Osnaim LaTorah is really reading even more into it, saying that Esau is even more so the split second, basically, the little bit of time that she passed by this house without stopping and pausing and being there. He not just squirms like Jacob does, but he really is trying to get out to be able to get to the place of idol worship.
The timing is confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Are they truly saying that when Jacob and Esau were still around, there was organized religion with synagogues? I mean,
Probably not. Although we'll see in this next text, if you turn the page to page 2, right? Keep going, Edith. Number 4.
When she passed the opening to the yeshiva of Shem and Eber.
Right? It makes it even worse, huh?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So they'll have the principle.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jacob aspired to get out. When she passed the entrance to a temple of idol worship, Esau aspired to get out. Rashi.
So he's using Rashi, who in some ways changes the Midrash a little bit to just make it that when she passes one, he squirms, and when she passes the other, he squirms, right? Which is how most of us learn the Midrash, but it really is a little bit more intense than that. Go ahead.
Why did Jacob get out when she passed the entrance to a yeshiva? For when the boy was in her womb, she taught him all of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the explanation.
Right,
Now,
right.
why specifically the yeshiva of Shem and Eber?
Mm-hmm.
It appears it is hard for a tzaddik to submit oneself to Esau, even if he was taught Torah from the mouth of an angel.
So there's a tradition that a fetus, when inside the mother's womb, is taught the entirety of the Torah, right? That there's an angel in there with the fetus, and a little candle to learn by, and one explanation of how we get this little impression, right, underneath our nose, right, is that, what's that?
Filtrum.
What's it called?
Filtrum.
I always forget the filtrum, right? The filtrum, right? How do we get that? As we're being born, the angel says to us, shh, right? And pushes in, right?
And they can't play hooky.
Don't tell, you can't play hooky. You're a captive audience in there, right? And don't tell anybody, right? And then it's our job the rest of our life, right, to sort of relearn what we had learned in the first place.
I got too many questions.
Yeah. But isn't it great where you're learning, you're like, oh wow, right? Like it's almost like I knew that before, right? And it's almost like relearning something.
How's that? Doesn't that conflict with the idea that we were all at Sinai and got the Torah there?
The rabbis are not above conflicting with one another. Not at all. So in some ways, to answer your question without an answer, right? Synagogues, no. Yeshivas, no, right? But in their rabbinic mind, right? Some ways, the rabbis are always wanting to build up the case for their own existence, right? There's the text that asks which is greater, good deeds or Torah study, right? And where do you think the rabbis come down?
Torah's
Of course, right? Well, they want to keep themselves employed,
business,
right?
yeah.
In business,
They have to keep
right?
the store open.
So,
Just from their behavior.
so I think that's part of this, right? Having Beit Knesset and a yeshiva in their teachings, it's like, oh, these things have always been around, right? This reality. Now, the yeshiva of Shem and Ever, who were Shem and Ever?
Shem was Noah's son.
Yeah, these are Noah's sons, right?
No, ever.
Well, these are I think maybe Ever is one of Shem's sons.
Whatever.
These are the from back then, and so they've got they've opened up this this yeshiva, and that's where she's passing by. So again, some distinctions in the midrash it says she's passing by a Beit Knesset, and here it's saying that she's passing by a yeshiva, which more be a school of some sort.
Midrashes are written in either Hebrew or Aramaic, or
Right.
so. Is there any issue with translation?
Of course,
those
yeah.
words?
No, we have to try and translate some of them. So there, I don't know that there's a difference between the yeah, I'd have to see. The first one. I think the first one says that it actually says, yeah, Batei Knesiot uBatei Midrashot. So the house of gathering, which is a synagogue, and a house of midrash of learning.
So those are kind of less specific then.
Right. But those are the terms that are used for synagogue and school.
Now,
So,
these two midrashes, they're written at different times.
of course, right.
So is,
Right.
is one commenting on the other? Or?
Well, they're both of these are commenting, I think, back on the midrash from Breshit Rabbah.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't have down here the years of when Oznaim LaTorah and Reb Bunam of Siska was, but so they're both basically going back to that midrash. Although it looks like Reb Bunam is looking at Rashi, right? And Rashi's already taken the midrash and filtered it, right? Okay, let's go on in the text. Barry, you want to read on page 147, verse 24?
When a time,
Oh, yeah, that one we read. Sorry, 27.
when the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors, but Jacob was a mild man who stayed in camp. Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah favored Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the open famished, and Esau said to Jacob, "Give me some of that red stuff to gulp down, for I am famished," which is why he was named Edom. Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright." And Esau said, "I am at the point of death, so of what use is my birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob then gave Esau bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank, and he rose and went away. Thus did Esau spurn the birthright.
Okay, so here we have really the first of two interactions that happen between Jacob and Esau before they split, right? Then they come back together later on. But there's not very many stories between the two of them. It's set up by the fact that they're different kinds of people, right? Esau is a hunter, a man of the outdoors. Jacob's mild and stays in the camp. And each of their parents is attracted to one or the other. So I'm talking about Isaac being attracted to Esau because in some ways he sees in him what he doesn't see in himself, right? He's this hunter going out, right? Isaac is regularly talked about as somebody just, things happen to him, right? He's not really in control of his own destiny. Everything's happening around him. and whereas Esau is seen more as a doer. And then you've got Jacob here, who stays at home. He's we might call him a mommy's boy, right? Really coddled by her, maybe, and so they've got those connections between their parents. And but then when Esau comes home one day, famished after hunting and not getting anything, we assume, then he leans on his brother for the stew, and Jacob sees this as an opportunity to be rewarded the birthright. Now, the birthright is, and we have this tension between this here and what we're going to get to later on with the story of the blessing. The birthright is really seen as a financial situation, right? Where the older child, the older son, gets a double portion of the inheritance. If there are two children, as in this case, we divide everything that the father has into three. The older one gets a double portion and the younger one gets the single. If there were 4 children, we would divide it into 5. The oldest one would get 2 of the 2/5, and then the other ones would each get 1/5. So it's just a double portion compared to all the other siblings, or in this, pretty much sons. And Esau's like, what do I need any kind of wealth for, right? In the future, I'm going to die here. And so he says, sure, I'll sell it to you because it's not worth anything to me. And so in some ways we could see that as a plus for Esau, right? Esau saying, the whole adage of you can't take it with you, right? What good is that going to be to me in the future if I'm dead now? And so really being realistic about things. So this is the main thing, and it sort of sets the tone for later on. But later, when we have the blessing, that's sort of separate from this. And you could say, well, Esau sold that, right? But I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Here he sold the birthright, not necessarily the blessing that the oldest child would get.
What does it also say about Jacob if Esau really has a point of death, which probably is?
Right.
So what is it? I'm going to make you sell me your birthright, otherwise you're going to.
Yeah. He takes advantage, right? And we have that with Jacob along the way that he's seen both here and with the blessing later on. Although you can say that Rebecca orchestrated that, but still Jacob's involved. And then also with Lavan in the story later on, that he's a little bit of a trickster, right? And that's also the struggle with, as I think I mentioned maybe before you came in, Randy, that the rabbis really see him as good, right? But yet we can look at this and that he's doing some of these things that we think are a little bit questionable. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit of a stepping aside from the main story for this story that parallels what happens to Abraham earlier. Go ahead, Randy, page 149.
There was a famine in the land aside from the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. The Lord had appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I point out to you. Reside in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. I will assign all these lands to you and to your heirs, fulfilling the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your heirs as numerous as the stars of heaven, and assign to your heirs all these lands, so that all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your heirs, inasmuch as Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my laws, and my teachings. So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, she is my sister, for he was afraid to say, my wife, thinking the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is beautiful. When some time had passed, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looking out of the window, saw Isaac fondling his wife Rebekah. Abimelech sent for Isaac and said, "So she is your wife. Why then did you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Abimelech said, "What have you done to us? One of the people might have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." Abimelech then charged all the people, saying, "Anyone who molests this man or his wife shall be put to death."
Okay, so here we have the beginning part of this. The story continues, but again, similar to Abraham saying, right, Sarah is my sister, right, so that they don't kill him to take her. Here it doesn't get as far as it did before. Like with Sarah, the king did take Sarah at least into his household. Whether there were any relations or not is a whole different story. But at least he took her in there. Here it seems like she's just sort of off on her own, or they're both living as quote unquote brother sister until the king sees this and says you could have made us guilty of something here, and it really does speak to needing to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Because they didn't even take her to be their wife. They clearly weren't going to kill Isaac to have her as a wife, and yet that's what he sort of sets up as the situation. Okay, go on. Verse 12.
Isaac sowed in that land and reaped 100-fold the same year. The Lord blessed him, and the man grew richer and richer until he was very wealthy. He acquired flocks and herds, a large household, so that the Philistines envied him, and the Philistines stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug. In the days of his father Abraham filled them. Start over again. And the Philistines stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of his father Abraham, filling them with earth. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you have become far too big for us." So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the Wadi of Gerar, where he settled. Isaac dug anew the wells which had been dug in the days of his father Abraham, and which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham's death, and he gave them the same names that his father had given them. And when Isaac's servants digging in the wadi found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." He named that well Esek, because they contended with him. And when they dug another well, they disputed over that one also, so he named it Sitnah. He moved from there and dug yet another well, and they did not quarrel over it, so he called it Rehoboth, saying, "Now at last the Lord had granted us ample space to increase in the land."
Here we have this situation going on. They're digging wells. Abraham had dug before, and Isaac now redigs some of them, but it seems like he's also opening up some new places, and thus there's as there still is today, right, disputes over land rights and water rights, right, and whether in that part of the world or in other parts of the world, and certainly water being a very important source of life. And sustenance. Go ahead.
Amazing. Abimelech, he said, he chastised Isaac for the possibility that he may sleep with Rebekah, but
Right.
but because that would be a sin. So that these arguments over the land and the water is okay.
Yeah. Yep. Right. I don't know why that I mean, this is just sort of economic, I think. I've seen this is very different. Okay. From there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Fear not, for I am with you, and I will bless you and increase your offspring for the sake of my servant Abraham." So he built an altar there and invoked the Lord by name. Isaac pitched his tent there, and his servants started digging a well. And Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahuzath, his counselor, and Phicol, chief of his troops. Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you have been hostile to me and have driven me away from you?" And they said, "We now see plainly that the Lord has been with you, and we thought, let there be a sworn treaty between our two parties, between you and us. Let us make a pact with you, that you will not do us harm, just as we have not molested you, but have always dealt kindly with you and sent you away in peace. From now on, be you blessed of the Lord." Then he made for them a feast, and they ate and drank. Early in the morning they exchanged oaths. Isaac then bade them farewell, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." He named it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. When Esau was 40 years old, he took to wife Judith, daughter of Bereri of Hittite, and Basmat, daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were a source of bitterness to Isaac and Rebekah. Oh, interesting. Okay. So we have the continuation here. Abimelech is still trying to move in on some of the wells that Isaac has found, but eventually they make a treaty to live peacefully with one another.
I guess Isaac just becoming so big and wealthy and powerful that.
Right. Well, this common we see throughout, whether it was with Abraham and Lot, right, where they had to go their separate ways because their herds were encroaching upon the others, and we have it here. We have it a little bit with Jacob and Lavan later on. So it's a common theme of needing to move away from the others so that you each have your own grazing lands, right? And finding your own water, which we see is an important thing. Okay, chapter 27, George, 153.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, he called his older son Esau, and said to him, "My son." He answered, "Here am I." And he said, "I am old now, and I do not know how soon I may die. Take your gear, your quiver and bow, and go out into the open and hunt me some game. Then prepare a dish for me such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die." Rebekah had been listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau had gone out into the open to hunt game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I overheard your father speaking to your brother Esau, saying, 'Bring me some game and prepare a dish for me to eat, that I may bless you with the Lord's approval before I die.' Now, my son, listen carefully as I instruct you. Go to the flock and fetch me 2 choice kids. I will make one of them, and I will make of them a dish for your father, such as he likes. Then take it to your father to eat, in order that he may bless you before he dies." Jacob answered his mother Rebekah, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am smooth-skinned. If my father touches me, I shall appear to him as a trickster, and bring upon myself a curse, not a blessing." But his mother said to him, "Your curse, my son, be upon me. Just do as I say, and go fetch them for me." He got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared a dish such as his father liked. Rebekah then took the best clothes of her older son Esau, which were there in the house, and had her younger son Jacob put them on. And she covered his hands and the hairless part of his neck with the skins of the kids. Then she put in the hands of her son Jacob the dish and the bread that she had prepared. He went to his father and said, "Father?" And he said, "Yes, which of my sons are you?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Pray sit up and eat of my game, that you may give me your innermost blessing." Isaac said to his son, "How do you succeed so quickly, my son?" And he said, because the Lord your God granted me good fortune. Isaac said to Jacob, come closer that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob drew close to his father Isaac, who felt him and wondered. The voice is the voice of Jacob, yet the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy, like those of his brother Esau, and so he blessed him. He asked, are you really my son Esau? And when he said, I am, he said, serve me and let me eat of my son's game, that I may give you my innermost blessing. So he served him and he ate, and he brought him wine and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come close and kiss me, my son. And he went up and kissed him. And he smelled his clothes, and he blessed him, saying, ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of the fields that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's son bow to you. Cursed be they who curse you. Blessed be they who bless you. No sooner had Jacob left the presence of his father Isaac, after Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, than his brother Esau came back from his hunt. He too prepared a dish and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father sit up and eat of his son's game, so that you may give me your innermost blessing. His father Isaac said to him, who are you? And he said, I am your son Esau, your firstborn. Isaac was seized with very violent trembling. Who was it then, he demanded, that hunted game and brought it to me? Moreover, I ate of it before you came. I blessed him. Now he must remain blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst into wild and bitter sobbing and said to his father, bless me too, father. But he answered, your brother came with guile and took away your blessing. Esau said, was he then named Jacob that he might supplant me these 2 times? First he took away my birthright, now he has taken away my blessing. And he added, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac answered, saying to Esau, but I have made him master over you. I have given him all his brothers for servants and sustained him with grain and wine. What then can I still do for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, have you but one blessing, father? Bless me too, father. And Esau wept aloud. And his father Isaac answered him, saying to him, see, your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth and the dew of heaven above. Yet by your sword shall you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck.
Okay, so here's the story, right? Right, it's quite a story of deceit, right? Of trickery, of real deep pain and yearnings. Esau, who we set up earlier as, what's the birthright to me? Here, clearly wants this blessing from his father, something that he values from him, and is deeply grieved when he finds out that he's given the blessing to Jacob. Okay, so let's look at some sources here now on these different verses. Going back to 27:1, when he says that his eyes are too dim to see. On the handout, text number 5 from Mayana Shel Torah, in the name of a Musar sage, says, Abraham expelled Ishmael and purified his house of all blemish and evil. Therefore he merited rest, and Rebekah entered into his home. Isaac did not expel Esau, and in his old age embarrassment rose up into his house. It hurt his eyes to see the behavior of Esau and his wives, and Jacob was compelled to run away. If you don't expel Esau from your home, in the end, Jacob will flee from amongst you. So this is really a key one where I see the rabbis shifting from speaking about Jacob and Esau as individuals to speaking of them as characteristics of people. That where it says really, if you don't expel Esau from your home, Jacob will flee from you. It's really saying if you don't expel evil, badness, then goodness will leave you. And seeing the two different stories with Abraham expelling Ishmael seems to then bring about peacefulness in the home, right? And the ability to have blessing like Rebecca entering in. Whereas since Isaac never expelled Esau, he started noticing, well, here we already saw where he's marrying from the Hittites, which he didn't want them to do, and other negative behavior. So we have the choice, right? We have the choice of either being complacent when we see evil, or doing something to get rid of it. And if we don't get rid of the evil, then goodness is going to leave us as well, right? We have that possibility. From the Mea Shiloach, also looking at this verse about his eyes being too dim to see, he says, the essence of Isaac, our father, is the opposite of Moses. Isaac didn't permit himself to leave the land, and we saw that, right? That God says don't leave the land, and he never ends up. So the power of vision fell from him. Never was Moses permitted to enter the land, but it is said, look at it well, and his eyes were undimmed. So I'm a little bit unclear here as to why, in some ways, never leaving the land is a punishment of some sort towards Isaac. That his eyesight, his vision, he loses his vision, whereas Moses, who never goes into the land, right? He's punished, he can't enter into the land, but he goes up onto a mountain and is able to see it. When he dies, it says his eyes were undimmed, and we've got those verses down below. One from Deuteronomy 3:27, where it says, go up to the summit of Pisgah and gaze about to the west, the north, the south, the east, look at it well, you shall not go across yonder Jordan. Right, so that's the setup. He's being told to go and look at it. And at the end of Deuteronomy, the end of the Torah, when Moses is dying, it says Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were undimmed and his vigor unabated. So in contrast between him and Isaac with the weak eyes, with the dimmed eyes, and Moses with strong, Meshiloch is coming in and saying it has something to do with looking well at the land, but being outside of it. And I don't really know why exactly, but an interesting contrast between Isaac and Moses is brought.
But Isaac he was commanded to stay.
Right, I understand. Right, that's the interesting distinction that there's something about it that I'm not really getting. Actually, I didn't think about it. I do have an English version of Mea Shiloach. I should have tried to look it up in there, and see if it has anything about it. Because don't really get it why, but he's making some distinction between Moses and Isaac here. On page 3, text 7 continues looking at this, and in the text that I was looking at in Iturei Torah, it sort of conflates these two paragraphs, and I ended up finding them because it quotes it from Midrash Tanchuma, but it basically in here squeezes them together. And when I found them in Midrash Tanchuma, I split them apart so we could see the two different Midrashim. Edith, you want to read that? Number 7?
Yeah. And his eyes were dim. When did his vision become impaired? The Holy One, blessed be he. For it saw that Isaac would desire to bless Esau, and he decreed therefore that Isaac should become away, so that when Jacob approached him for the blessing, Isaac would not realize that he was conferring the blessing upon Jacob. David proclaimed, many things has thou done, and Lord my God, even the wondrous work and the thought toward us. There is none to be compared unto thee. That is, all thy wondrous work and thy thoughts toward us are in our behalf.
Okay, so he's at the end. The Midrash is quoting David from Psalms that everything that happens, right, all your wondrous works and your thoughts are on our behalf. Why does that fit? Because earlier on the Midrash is saying that knowing that Isaac was going to want to bless Esau, he dims his eyes, right? He sets up the situation where it's not going to work, right? Or that it's going. Sorry, that it sets up a situation that Isaac's not going to be able to bless Esau because Jacob will be able to come in and trick him because his eyes have become weak. It's a little bit of a struggle in terms of theologically, right? Do we see God working in this way or not? But I think it's that we can look at it and just say that situations, right, are sometimes in such a way so that one thing happens or another thing isn't able to happen. And then the second part of the Midrash, go ahead, Edith. He called Esau.
Me?
Sure, go ahead.
He called Esau his greater son. Why did he call him his greater son?
Okay,
Teachers
so what?
must flatter wicked men when they are in power. Isaac foresaw that Esau's descendants would dominate the world, and therefore he called him his greater son. The Holy One, blessed be he, said to Israel, inasmuch as Esau is now in control, you must flatter him. For my kingdom is not yet firmly established. But in the future, when my kingdom is firmly established, I will call him to account, as it is said, and Savior shall come up on Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau at that time, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's.
Okay. So if we look at the Hebrew, where it says, Vayikra et Esav beno Hagadol, we usually think of it as the older son. Right, but this Midrash is looking at it and saying he's calling Esau the greater son, Gadol, as greater than Jacob. So the question is why, and the answer coming from sort of this teaching that we should flatter wicked people when they are in power, right, knowing that there'll be a time. When the descendants, when they have even more power, when the Esau's descendants will be dominating the world, and that's what I said before. The Esau is seen as the ancestor to Rome, and Rome's going to come in. The Romans come and destroy the temple, so wanting to have as many chips in the bank, basically, before that happens, is what he's trying to set up here.
Being associated with Rome, is that?
It's rabbinic. It's a rabbinic thing that Esau is a dome and a dome is Rome.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you don't see a foreshadowing like the rise of Islam.
No. No, I mean, when most of this, like when Midrashim are being written, some of the later rabbis that we have here know about Islam by that point. But when the Midrashim are being written, it's in the 1st to 5th century before Islam. So yeah, there's no. I mean, right. And what you're pointing at is accurate. That when we see Esau is Rome, it's because we've already lived through Rome, right? Whereas they could read it back into it. But yeah, there aren't rabbinic, in that sense, rabbinic texts that talk about Islam.
But but before Islam, there were certainly their predecessors who occupied the entire Middle East. Why were they not recognized as the descendants of Esau rather than Rome, which is much later?
I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe because they're seen as descendants of so many different. I mean, all these other names that we have, right, are the Hittites, the Canaanites, right, the Philistines. There's so many. They're not all one. They're not all coming from Esau. I mean, coming from Ishmael. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do some looking into to see are there midrashim or other teachings that set up a situation looking back to the descendants of Ishmael. I can't think of where I've learned them. I just sort of think that line just sort of gets dropped for the most part in the rabbinic teachings, which is different than a lot of the other ones. Verse 2 here, where he says, I am old now, I do not know how soon I may die. The rabbis say, this is text 8 on page 4, the sages say in Talmud Bavli, if one subdues the evil inclination, great, excellent. If not, he should remind himself of the day of death, right? Meaning that, right, the Yetzer Hara, the inclination to do bad, or the inclination to do self-serving stuff, is something that you have to keep in check. And if you're not able to keep it in check, one way to do so is to say, you're going to die anyway, right? So some of this stuff you shouldn't be pursuing, right? To self-aggrandizing stuff. Regarding Isaac, there wasn't a need to remind him of the day of his death, implying that he had his Yetzer Hara in check. And this is what it means by saying, I do not know how soon I may die, right? So he doesn't have to be told, reminded that he's going to be dying, because he's got his Yetzer Hara under control. And verse 3, take your gear, your quiver, your bow, and go out into the open and hunt me some game. This one I think was an interesting one. Samson Raphael Hirsch says, you always hunt for fun anyway. So when you hunt on my account, you will raise up the mitzvah of honoring your father. And this is what's meant when it says hunt for me, right? Because Isaac says to Esau, hunt for me game, right? What is it? What does it mean, hunt for me? Do it as an act of kibud av, right? Honoring your father, and therefore you'll deserve a blessing. Whereas other times when you've hunted, you're just doing it for fun, and not fulfilling this mitzvah. And then the last text, then prepare a dish for me such as I like and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die, is the last part. Due to what did Isaac want to bless his first son and not all his sons like Jacob blesses his sons before he died? Right? If we think about the scene of Jacob in the next generation, Jacob blesses all of his children. Rather, heaven turned this around. Had Isaac definitely blessed Jacob, there would remain an accusation forever that Jews only see it fitting to bless those at the level of Jacob. Therefore God, should be a capital G, turned it around for Isaac to desire to bless Esau so that he would be able to bless Israel at other times. Also, there are times in their low moments, God forbid, are bad like Esau. So here he's saying that Isaac goes to bless Esau as a way to set things up for the future generations that Jacob can bless everybody, by saying, because if it had been that Isaac blessed them both, then there'd be other times where people would say, oh, you have to be as good as Jacob in order to receive a blessing, and didn't want that to be the case. And also recognizing that there are times in Israel's, Jacob's low moments that they might be as bad as Esau, God forbid. So not wanting to bring those two blessings together, Jacob and Esau together, to bless them.
Shouldn't it be that someone you want to bless the good person and not the bad?
Yes, but I think here it's setting it up so that if you're going to bless, if you bless the good first, right? In this situation, the first time that it happens, if you bless the good, then others could say, oh, no one else can achieve that level. Only people that achieve that level deserve blessing, as opposed to if you bless the bad here with Esau, then in the future, others can reach that, can attain that, reach that.
Okay, well, I have to go.
I gotcha. We're done anyway. Have a great holiday, okay? And I'll see everybody on Shabbat.